Hey, Chris here from Food and Drink Stories. Today I'm going to be tackling two heavyweights of the sparkling wine world, Champagne and Prosecco. I'll be covering what you should be drinking, why they taste so different, and just some ideas about what to look out for when you're buying them yourself. Let's get stuck in. First up is Champagne, which is really the original sort of icon of the sparkling wine world. It's rich, it's lean, it's delicate, it's complex. There's some amazing flavours going on, it's sort of bready, biscuity notes, as well as the sort of peachy, vanilla-y flavours as well. Champagne as we know it was first created in the 17th century by a man called Dom Perignon. The reason he's considered to be the sort of founding father of modern day champagne is because he pioneered the traditional method, which involves a second fermentation in the bottle. Now, if you want to find out more about winemaking as a whole, I will link a video up in the cards in the top corner, but basically that particular step is really important in champagne production because it basically involves adding yeast and sugar into the bottle once it's produced, which creates carbon dioxide and the signature sparkle that is so synonymous with champagne. It also adds those sort of buttery, biscuity sort of flavours that again are really, really important. Champagne is of course a quintessentially French wine. In fact, it can only be produced in a particular region of France, the Champagne region, which is in the northeast, just east of Paris, around Reims, which is sort of the heart of Champagne. The grapes that actually go into it are really famous worldwide, in part because of their use in Champagne, and they are Chardonnay, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier. Two of those three are red grapes, which you might think, well, how does that work? And in fact, the reason it stays that colour is because of minimal contact with the skins when the grapes are pressed. So when it comes to red wines, the sort of deep, rich colour actually comes from pressing for quite a long period or macerating with the skins. With Champagne, it's a really light, delicate press, and it's just a sort of top quality, sort of first batch of juice that's used, and that means that Champagne keeps that colour that you typically associate with white wine. Those three grapes are the only ones that are allowed in Champagne, but different houses and different winemakers will use them in different sort of proportions. So some will use more Chardonnay, some will use more Pinot Noir, and some may even just use one or the other. Taittinger, which is what I'm drinking today, great example of a sort of traditional blend. It's 40% Chardonnay and then 30% Pinot Noir and then 30% Pinot Meunier. For me, it's great. It's lean, it's complex, it's interesting, it's great for celebrations, but also it's surprisingly good with food. So it's great with fatty foods like fish and chips, but it's also good with a whole raft of seafood and, to be honest, loads of different stuff. On to the sort of new challenger. Well, in fact, it's not actually that new, to be honest. Prosecco, the production of sort of modern day Prosecco started in the 18th century. So I think about 100 years after Champagne. Of course, though, Prosecco's popularity has really boomed recently, and I think it's because fundamentally it's cheaper. It's also, I think, a bit more approachable sometimes. It's really bright, really refreshing, nice and fruity, and really drinkable. You can sort of, enjoy an afternoon out in the sunshine, sipping on a glass of Prosecco. It's great. Prosecco comes from a specific region. It comes from northeastern Italy, just north of Venice. The region that makes Prosecco has actually grown quite a lot over the years. The original region was called Coniglialdo Valdobbiadini. Is that right? It's a long word, however it's pronounced. That's the original area. Regardless, that area still makes really high quality Prosecco, so it's worth looking out for. As I already mentioned, Prosecco on the whole is an awful lot cheaper than Champagne. There's a couple of reasons for this. The main one really is the winemaking process. So whilst Champagne is generally quite labour intensive, Prosecco actually is a lot more straightforward. I'm not suggesting making Prosecco is easy by any stretch, but there seems to be a few less sort of stages in the process. The major one is that second fermentation that I've already mentioned. With Champagne, it takes place in the bottle, and it's quite complicated in terms of getting the yeast out, moving all the bottles individually, but with Prosecco, that second fermentation takes place in a stainless steel tank, and the bottling happens all under pressure. Whilst being quite a lot simpler, it also means that there's a lot less sort of contact between the yeast and the wine, and it means that that yeasty bready flavour flavour that is found in Champagne is not really found in Prosecco. It's also aged less, so that's why you get that sort of cleaner, fruitier flavour, because it really is just the expression of the grape. Another reason it's a bit cheaper is it's just the one grape. So the grape in Prosecco is called Glera, and it's not always been called that. Glera was actually once called Prosecco, but in order to sort of protect the brand, Italian winemakers campaigned for it to be changed. There is still arguments going on with producers in other countries who are still growing Prosecco about what they can or can't call their wine. Regardless, the grape is now known as Glera, and Prosecco must come from that region of northeast Italy. I guess winemakers are a little lesser known in Prosecco. I think champagne houses carry a lot of weight, and people are familiar with champagne houses, but Prosecco not quite so much. So you tend to look out for the Prosecco and look at the price, and that's where you tend to buy from. This is La Giosia. Christ, I can't do Italian. So look, both are really good products in their own right. I think there's sometimes a bit of snobbery around Prosecco. I get it. Some of it is not great. But if you get a good example, it's definitely worth trying. As I say, a top tip really is to look out for the Val Ghialdini on the label. It's generally a couple of quid more, but it's well worth it. The time and the effort and the grapes themselves are really, really good. So I personally really enjoy drinking it. With champagne, again, they're amazing. They are more expensive. So for me personally, I drink them special occasions, or if I'm sort of gifted a bottle, but I don't tend to go out and buy them all that often. I really think you have to look sort of 25 to 30 pounds plus to get a good bottle. You know, by all means, if you have come across really good ones for less than that, do comment below and let me know. But for me, Tattinger's a great entry. I got this for 28 pounds at Waitrose. It was reduced down from 40, but because of the effort that goes into making it, what you pay for is what you get, basically. Of course, these two are not just the only sparkling wines available by any stretch. I think people tend to gravitate towards them because they carry such a big name, but there's loads of other really good ones. There's some great quality carvers, so don't turn your nose up at carver. English sparkling wine is fantastic. In fact, do go and have a look at my English wine video. We tend to use the sort of traditional champagne grapes. They come out at roughly the same price, and the quality is really good. So I do recommend you go and try an English sparkling wine. There's also some amazing ones from New Zealand, from Australia. There's some amazing ones from Germany. Germany, I think, actually are the biggest consumer of sparkling wine per capita, and they make some really good quality stuff. And also in France, there's some great sparkling wine that doesn't come from that small pocket of northeastern France. The Loire Valley, Alsace, Burgundy, some amazing sparkling wines, and often they are quite a bit cheaper, so do experiment. So this is an Australian sparkling wine, which actually uses the same grapes as in Champagne. It actually comes in at a fraction of the price. It's half the price of the Champagne, but it's quite different. It's quite interesting. It's, I don't know, it still has those sort of biscuity, bready notes, so I think it's definitely still had some, aging with the yeast. It's all right, it's good. I'm not sure I prefer it. It's tasty though. It's actually from Tasmania, and Tasmania has a really good history of making sparkling wine. It's just that much further south, that much cooler, and cool climates are really important for good quality sparkling wine. So yeah, it's a good one to look out for. I'd say half the price of the Champagne, but just go and have some fun, try some different ones. But hopefully that was useful. I will link all of the different sparkling wines that I've tasted today in the description, as well as some other bits of kit and stuff that would be really useful. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking or subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.